Okay, our main goal for this section is to simplify rational expressions, okay? But first, we need to remind ourselves of simplifying just plain old fractions. As we go through this chapter, you're going to have to review a lot of stuff with fractions. So we need to, at this point, review simplifying fractions, but later we're going to have to review multiplying and dividing fractions, adding and subtracting fractions, finding least common denominators, all sorts of stuff, because everything with plain old fractions is going to have some kind of connection to these rational expressions. So for now, let's remind ourselves. To simplify fractions, we write the numerator and denominator as factorizations and cancel out factors top to bottom. Now, when you actually simplify fractions, sometimes we just kind of divide out common factors until we get something that's fully simplified. But I'm going to show you this a very particular way so that you can truly see that connection between what we do with fractions compared to what we do with rational expressions. Okay, so example 3 says simplify each expression or simplify each fraction. We want to get our fraction to what is called lowest terms. Lowest terms is where the numerator and denominator have no common factors other than 1. So that is our main goal, okay? Now, when you write the numerator and denominator of a fraction as a factorization, it can be any factorization. It doesn't have to be the least, the prime factorization, I guess is what we would want to call it. So just as long as you get any kind of factorization of the numerator and denominator where you can see common factors that cancel out, you're in good shape. So with 24 and 60, I happen to know that 24 is the same thing as 2 times 12. I happen to also know that 60 is the same thing as 5 times 12. Okay, if you don't believe me, go to a calculator. 2 times 12 is definitely 24. 5 times 12 is definitely 60. But what I notice is these two numbers, the numerator and denominator, they have a common factor of 12. And we, the mathematicians, know that 12 divided by 12 is just 1. So any number divided by itself is just equal to 1. So when I cancel out that common factor, again, we're real bad about just saying, hey, we cancel, we cancel, we cancel. Yeah, we're canceling out common factors. But in this case, 12 divided by 12 becomes 1, and 1 times 2/5 is just 2/5. So my final answer here is going to be that 24 over 60 reduces to 2/5. Okay? Let's see if we can mimic the same thing over here with part B. So for part B, we have 14 and 56. I happen to know that 14 is the same as 2 times 7. Okay, so I'm getting an equivalent expression. 2 times 7 is the same exact thing as 24. Now I want to do the same thing with 56. I happen to know that 56 is 8 times 7. Okay, well, that's great. We've got a common factor of 7. So we would cancel out the 7s, knowing that becomes a 1. 2 times 1 is 2. And 8 times, no, there's technically a 1 there too. 8 times 1 is 8. So we're like, yay, it's reduced. But is it? Okay. So over here, when we were looking at part A, this right here, this 12 happened to be the greatest common factor. It was the largest factor that the two numbers that we were starting with had in common. Well, when we came over here to 14 over 56, this is just a common factor. Unfortunately, it was not the greatest common factor. So we need to keep going. Okay? So you want to make sure you get down to lowest terms. You want to divide out everything that possibly could be common between the numerator and denominator. Well, 2 and 8 still have a common factor of 2. So I could think of 2 as 2 times 1, and I could think of 8 as 2 times 4. Well, now I have another common factor. I see that these 2's are going to divide out to become a 1. So I would really be left with 1/4. So when you're factoring, or not factoring, but when you're simplifying fractions, your goal is to get the greatest common factor and divide it out all at once. But sometimes when you're dividing fractions, you get a common factor, but it's not necessarily the biggest common factor. So you just want to be really aware of when things are fully reduced or simplified. So that is reducing fractions or simplifying fractions. So in the next video, we're going to talk about simplifying rational expressions, and I hope you can see those connections nicely.